The night my son-in-law invited me to dinner, I thought I was meeting his parents for the first time. 10 minutes later, a thick envelope hit the table, and I realized they had spent years planning to destroy me. What they didn't know, the poor old man, sitting across from them, secretly owned the billion-dollar company their son worked for. Before we begin, do me a quick favor. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Now let me tell you how one family dinner turned into the biggest mistake they ever made. My name is Arthur Bennett, and most people look straight through me. That's the advantage of getting older. People stop paying attention. They see gray hair, worn boots, and an old pickup truck, and they decide your story is already over. I encouraged that assumption. I drove a faded Ford Ranger with a dented rear bumper and a passenger door that only opened from the inside. I wore old flannel shirts, cheap reading glasses, and a $20 watch I'd owned for years. Meanwhile, hidden behind that ordinary life, I owned Bennett Freight Systems, one of the largest private logistics companies in the Midwest. 26 distribution hubs, nearly 5,000 employees.
Contract worth millions.
But I never cared about looking rich. I grew up poor enough to understand something most wealthy people never learn. The quieter you live, the more honest the world becomes around you. People reveal themselves when they think you have nothing to offer them. My daughter Emily hated that philosophy. "Dad," she used to laugh, "you look like you repair lawnmowers behind a gas station." And yet, I'd reply, "You still ask me to pay for dinner." She inherited her mother's humor and kindness. Unfortunately, she also inherited her mother's weakness for charming men. That's how Ryan Mercer entered our lives. Emily brought Ryan home one Christmas Eve wearing an expensive coat and a smile polished bright enough to sell beachfront property in a desert. Ryan was handsome, confident, smooth in a dangerous kind of way. Not fake exactly, just practiced. The kind of man who always knew what expression to wear before entering a room. When he shook my hand for the first time, he squeezed just a little too hard. Men like that always do. Still, he impressed me, so I quietly investigated him. Any father with resources who says he wouldn't check his daughter's boyfriend is lying. Ryan's education checked out. His work history was solid. No criminal record. No scandals. And honestly, I liked him. So when Emily told me she was serious about him, I made a decision that would eventually change all our lives. I hired him. Not directly, of course. Ryan believed a major executive recruiting firm discovered him through recommendations. He went through interviews, evaluations, and board meetings, all legitimate. What he never knew was that every road quietly led back to me. At 32 years old, Ryan Mercer became the youngest operations director in Bennett Freight Systems history. He thought he earned the opportunity through talent alone. To be fair, mostly he did. I simply opened the door. For over a year, everything worked beautifully. Ryan thrived inside the company. He improved delivery systems, reorganized failing warehouses, and saved millions in transportation costs. The executives respected him. Employees trusted him. And Emily adored him. Watching them together sometimes made me think maybe life had finally decided to give my family some peace. That illusion lasted exactly 14 months. One Thursday evening, Ryan called me unexpectedly. "Arthur," he said warmly, "my parents are in town this weekend. We'd love for you to join us for dinner." Something about his voice bothered me immediately. Not the words, the rhythm, like a man carefully stepping across thin ice. "Sure," I replied slowly. "Where are we meeting?" "The Wellington Club." That told me enough already. The Wellington wasn't the kind of restaurant people casually suggested. It was the kind of place wealthy people used to quietly measure each other's status. No prices on the menu. Piano music nobody listened to. Servers who spoke softer than priests. I almost declined. But instincts are funny things. Sometimes they warn you to run. Other times they whisper that something important is waiting behind danger. Saturday night, I arrived wearing my cleanest flannel shirt and old brown boots. On purpose. Ryan greeted me near the entrance looking like he'd stepped out of a luxury watch advertisement. Perfect haircut, tailored jacket, polished shoes. "You made it," he said. "I found parking," I answered. He laughed too quickly. Inside, his parents were already seated. Daniel and Margaret Mercer. The moment I shook Daniel's hand, I knew trouble had finally arrived. Some people are too friendly when they first meet you. Not because they like you, because they're hiding something. "Arthur," Daniel said warmly, gripping my hand with both of his. "We've heard so much about you." That sentence always means the same thing. Someone has been discussing you privately. Dinner started politely enough. Small talk, wine recommendations, stories about travel. Ryan discussed work carefully, avoiding sensitive details out of professional habit. Then Daniel asked casually, "So Arthur, are you still living in that little house outside Cedar Grove?" Little house. Interesting wording. "Yes," I answered. "Still growing tomatoes in the backyard." He nodded without listening. 40 minutes later, right after the main course arrived, Daniel reached into his jacket and pulled out a thick envelope. Cream-colored. Heavy. The kind lawyers use. He placed it gently on the table in front of me. Ryan suddenly became fascinated with his steak. That's when I understood. This dinner had never been a family gathering. It was an ambush. "Arthur," Daniel said carefully, "there are some things regarding your past that our family believes should finally be addressed." I looked at the envelope, then at Ryan, still staring downward, and suddenly, 30 years of buried memories came rushing back. Because printed across the top page inside that envelope was a name I hadn't seen in decades. Michael Bennett, my older brother, the man who betrayed me before disappearing forever. Back in 1992, Michael and I started a small trucking company together. We were broke, ambitious, and stupid enough to believe hard work guaranteed loyalty. For years we built that business side by side, until I discovered Michael had been secretly stealing from us. Small amounts at first, then larger ones. He created hidden accounts, diverted clients, and quietly built a competing company behind my back using our money. When I uncovered everything, I gathered proof. Bank records, forged signatures, fake invoices, enough evidence to send Michael to prison. But instead of destroying him publicly, I gave him a choice. Walk away permanently or face court. Michael disappeared, and I rebuilt the company alone from the ashes. What I never knew was that Michael spent the rest of his life telling his family I ruined him. Daniel Mercer was Michael Bennett's nephew. Ryan's family had spent years believing I destroyed an innocent man. And now they thought they finally had leverage against me. Daniel folded his hands calmly. "My uncle died believing you stole his future," he said quietly. "We think certain wrongs deserve correction." There it was. The real reason Ryan entered my life. The real reason they encouraged the relationship with Emily. They believed they had positioned themselves close enough to finally force revenge. I stayed calm. Because angry men lose control. Quiet men win wars. "What exactly do you want?" I asked. Daniel leaned forward. "A financial settlement, quietly handled. In exchange, these documents never become public." Ryan finally looked up, and what I saw on his face surprised me. Not confidence. Fear. Real fear. Like someone realizing the situation had gone far beyond what he agreed to. That's when I decided to stop playing defense. Because unlike them, I came prepared. I reached into my coat and placed my own envelope onto the table. Smaller, simpler, far more dangerous. Daniel's confidence flickered. Your uncle kept selective records, I said calmly. I kept everything. Then I slid the documents toward him. Original banking statements, transfer records, signed witness testimony from Michael's former accountant. Every piece proving my brother had stolen from the company for years. Margaret's face lost color immediately. Daniel stopped smiling. Ryan stared between us like the floor beneath him had disappeared. You lied to me? Ryan asked his father quietly. Daniel tried recovering control. Your uncle suffered because of this man. No, Ryan interrupted sharply. Did you know the truth? Silence. That silence answered everything. Ryan leaned back slowly, rubbing both hands across his face. Then he looked at me, and I could see the exact second his brain connected all the pieces together. The company, the interviews, the executive board, the hiring process. Arthur, he said carefully. Who are you? I held his gaze. I own Bennett Freight Systems. Complete silence. Even the piano music somewhere across the restaurant seemed to disappear. Ryan blinked once, twice, like a computer failing to process corrupted information. You own the company? Entirely. Daniel's expression collapsed. For over a year, they believed Ryan had climbed into a powerful company on his own merit while secretly positioning the family closer to me. Instead, they had unknowingly placed their son inside my empire. Ryan looked physically ill. You knew who I was this whole time? Before your first interview. Why would you do that? Because I'm a father, I answered simply. And that was the truth. I wanted to know whether the man marrying my daughter could handle power responsibly. Not inherited power. Earned responsibility. For 14 months, Ryan passed every test. Until tonight, Ryan turned slowly toward his father. You used me. Daniel tried defending himself immediately. I was protecting our family. No, Ryan said quietly. You were trying to use mine. That sentence hit harder than any shouting ever could. Margaret started crying softly. Daniel looked 20 years older than when dinner began. And for the first time all evening, I actually felt sorry for him. Not because he failed. Because grief had poisoned him so deeply that revenge became more important than truth. Finally, Ryan looked back at me. I should have stopped this dinner the second I realized what was happening, he admitted.
I'm sorry.
I studied him carefully for several seconds. Then I nodded once. You still have your job Monday morning. Relief crossed his face so fast he couldn't hide it. As for the rest of this, I continued, looking at Daniel, I'm ending it here. Daniel frowned slightly. I'm not suing you. I'm not exposing your family. I'm not interested in revenge. Why? He asked weakly. Because your uncle already destroyed enough lives. The waiter approached cautiously at the worst possible moment. Would anyone care for dessert? All four of us stared at him. Poor guy nearly backed into a wall. Ryan suddenly laughed under his breath. Not because anything was funny, because pressure had finally cracked. You know what? I said. Bring 2 chocolate cakes and coffee. The waiter practically sprinted away. Daniel and Margaret left 10 minutes later without finishing dinner. Ryan stayed. We sat quietly for a long time after they were gone. Finally, he asked the question that mattered most. Do you actually trust me? Not as Emily's husband. Not as an employee. As a leader. I leaned back in my chair. Last year, I said, you redesigned our Western freight network and saved the company millions without being told to fix the problem. You protected jobs during budget cuts. You earned loyalty from people twice your age. I paused. So yes, I trust you. His eyes watered slightly, though he fought hard to hide it. Then I added, but Monday morning, we stop pretending. No more mystery? No more mystery. He smiled for the first time all night. A real smile. Hours later, I drove home in my old Ford Ranger beneath a cold autumn sky. Same cracked dashboard. Same worn steering wheel. Same flannel shirt. Except now, somewhere across the city, one family had just learned the dangerous cost of underestimating quiet people. When I got home, my porch light was still on because Emily always forgot to turn it off when she visited. My phone buzzed. A text from Ryan. Emily says you're impossible. Also, she says the flannel shirts are embarrassing. I smiled and replied, the flannel shirts paid for her inheritance. Then I locked my truck, walked toward my house, and listened to the quiet night around me. Some people build wealth to impress strangers. I built mine so the people I loved would never need to fear the world. And in the end, that made all the difference.